everybody. A warm welcome to Wisdom from North, the place where we're diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Jannike, and today I'm here with author Miguel Mendonça and channeler Rob Gauthier. And we're going to speak about Miguel's latest book. It's called Being with the Beings, the How and the Why of ET Contact. And this is the last one in his trilogy. And the previous books is Meet the Hybrids, which he co-wrote with Barbara Lamb, and We Are the Disclosure. And in the book that we're going to speak about today, Miguel has interviewed 9 different people about their ongoing interaction with extraterrestrials, and one of them is Rob. And Rob is very recognized within this field. He has channeled over 100 beings. He has his own YouTube channel where you can check out his work. He's also called the ET Whisperer, and he has co-authored 3 books together with Jeffrey Viscardi, I think it was. Hello guys, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Nice to be with you.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having us. I'm so excited for this.
I'm very excited too. And Miguel, I'll start with you. I loved your book, and I've been especially focused on your chapters and the chapter with Robert, but you're interviewing many different channelers as well. And I'm curious to hear a little bit about the start, because you downloaded apparently this information, or you downloaded the idea for the book and the questions, and I thought that was very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Well, I had just ordered the bound proof of part 2 of We Are the Disclosure, and so I'd been working on Meet the Hybrids, then I'd gone straight into We Are the Disclosure. And I was hoping for kind of a break, but apparently not. Somebody somewhere had other ideas about that. I don't know exactly where it came from, but it feels like more of a higher self thing. It felt like something that was so in alignment. When it came through, it just made sense to me, perfect sense. And it was delivered in a way, the way that I think, the way that I structure things. So it feels very familiar to me. It feels very comfortable. And I had just literally ordered the bound proof. So it was going to take several days, like 4 days to get here. So I thought, great, I can just chill out for a few days and just put the whole ET subject out of my mind for a few days, get grounded, just play video games, ride my bike, sit under a tree, that kind of stuff. However, I would say it was within a minute. I just had my eyes closed. I was just discharging mentally, just emptying my mind. And I suddenly saw like a sort of data readout, Being with Beings, a book about people who have had long ongoing contact with the beings, then a list of 5 participants, 4 that I've worked with before, plus Lisa Royal Holt. And I didn't really know her work very well, so I had to go and research her. And then a list of questions. And they were just bang, 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 bang. And then the final one was, what message would they like to share? Right, so I sat up, I recognized this as a download. By that point, there were all the hoof prints of a download on this thing. So I just wrote it up word for word. Then I think I spent some time looking at this and thinking, well, man, this is a really exciting idea. I mean, this is really going to do what I wanted to do with this series, which is just to take it as far as I possibly could. And so the next day I did an interview with Kevin Moore, and I asked him at the end of that interview, listen, this thing happened. I may have talked about it in the interview with him, I can't remember. But at the end I said, well, look, who should I be getting that isn't already on this list? and straight away he said Rob Gauthier, Krista Reiser, two people he'd interviewed with before. And then I talked to another guy, Ruben Langdon, the next day, and he straight away said Rob and Krista. So I thought, okay, well, that's simple enough. And then talking with Rob, I don't know how it happened, but a good friend of his, Vashta Narada, either Rob said, you've got to get Vashta on board, or like I knew her work anyway. She did the cover art, and many of the images in the book, there's 26 images in here, some of which is light language, some of which is representations of different kinds of beings. Some are by Vashta, some are by other people in the book. And then there's Ashley Ruiz. She's done a load in Vanessa Lamort's chapter. And Vanessa, I mean...
Yeah, it was interesting because I've noticed her pictures as well, and it was really good to get a voice to her, because she has been, for those who don't know her, she has been making really beautiful pictures of ETs, and you kind of personalize them more in a way, because at least I am like wondering, how do they look, you know? And I'm going to ask you, Rob, about that. But back to you, Miguel. You said that this book has changed you, because you tried to be very objective at first. But then it seemed like you were or you had to go through your own journey with this book. Did you have some experiences? Like, what happened with you making or writing this book?
Well, it really started with Meet the Hybrids. I mean, there's so many stories, and I've actually documented quite a bit of it. Not everything, but quite a bit of it is in each book. I will have a section where I will say, well, you know, this happened along the way. And I think there was a lot of stuff with kind of light and energy that was going on during Meet the Hybrids. I mean, I remember the one that really sticks out, the one where I felt I really crossed the threshold was where myself and Barbara, it was like this, it was three of us on Skype, myself, Barbara Lamb, and Jojolie Cuta, or Juju. And so we're interviewing Juju, and I'm just transcribing, I'm just clattering away on the keyboard, taking notes. And, you know, I'm trying to focus, but there's this part of my mind going, oh my God, this is crazy far out. I had no idea. What a hybrid really was when I started this, and how it is to be one, how it is to live that way and see the world that way. But I started to realize that there are so many parallels with my own life. And I started to see that they were basically describing my childhood over and over and over again, all of them, the way they relate to humanity, to the world, to the stars, all of those things. But in my case, without sort of overt ET contact. But while we were talking with Juju, I suddenly felt this incredible energy sort of in my forearms and hands. And they were just sort of, while I'm doing this, it was just this pulsing, radiating kind of energy. And I was just looking at my hands thinking, what the hell is this? And Juju casually happened to look at she would have seen Barbara and myself, and she just casually looked across to me and said, wow, Miguel, you really have an incredible aura around your hands.
So they noticed it.
You can see that? This thing's actually real? Yeah. I mean, that was the moment at which I realized.
That's interesting that you're saying, is this actually real, when you've written, so much material about it, you've been really delving into it, and you're still asking, is this really real? And I think that's the journey, even maybe for you, Rob, maybe you can answer that. Do you feel sometimes you doubt, even though you've been channeling 100 beings?
I really have kind of left the doubt behind me. There's been so many synchronicities, but the first few years, very crucial. I still do get surprised though. Like when I work with Artif on a one-on-one basis, when we're trying to work through the conscious channeling for the book that that I've been writing for 2 years now. When I read what's on the paper, I can't believe that I was able to do that just from a direct connection instead of from the download or direct in trance channeling state. And whenever someone tells me, I had a session with TReb or Artif, they said this, and I couldn't believe it because this just happened yesterday, or they knew about this, and I never told you. That still does give me a surprise, even though I know what they're capable of, I know what I'm capable of, and I know how that connection process works. It still throws me for a loop many times. So,
Right. Yeah, and the way you channel, from what I understand, it's not fully conscious in a way. You're kind of in a trance. So does that mean that you actually don't know what's coming out? Or are you hearing it? Or is it like you're just talking and you're somebody, where else?
well, there's three different ways that it usually comes through when I do channel. The one that's the most common, I always say if I do it 100 times, out of that 100 times, maybe 95, is where I'm not conscious at all. There's 0% of me that's left there in the interaction. And even though there's a percentage of me, nothing to my conscious mind that I can bring forward or remember. But maybe 3 or 4 out of the 100 times that I channel, I can listen to the session. If there's something that I need to know right away, if there's something that is beneficial for me to hear in that moment during the exchange, then I can hear it. And that usually happens when I'm dealing with people who are very close to me. Like if Kalina has a session, I'll be able to hear that, my fiance, my partner. Then I can hear into that one. But even at that point, I'm still not consciously in the room, consciously feeling my body. I'm still in a very deep trance. And when I channel, I astral project. So my consciousness is with my guide, TReb, the original guide that I started channeling. So even when I'm listening into the session, I'm still sitting across from TReb, communicating with him and hearing that. And then maybe, maybe 1 or 2 times out of 100, which is less and less throughout the last few years, then I'll experience something completely different. Then TReb will show me something with him being there or not. He'll show me a timeline or a past life of mine or a parallel life. One time he showed me something about if I would have never left my depression, what my life would have been like. There's
Sorry,
been
if
other
you
times
had
where
left, if you had.
if I never left the depression that I was in before I
Oh,
started my path, what that would have looked like. And it was pretty somber, pretty dark experience. So all of these different things he can show me. And maybe one time out of every 1,000, it's only happened a few times, then I probably have maybe 1 or 2 out of 1,000, but I have zero memory of it all. It's just like going to sleep and waking up with no
wow.
dream state memory. But normally it's just me and Trev hanging out. And in fact, Miguel mentioned a mutual friend of ours, Ruben Langdon, who does a documentary series on YouTube and Vimeo. And he called it, when he communicated with TReb and found out how this all worked for me, he calls it gone fishing with TReb because it's just completely me and TReb hanging out and talking, not even about important things. Probably over half the time we're just relaxing and talking like two friends. But it's been a
Right.
long time for us communicating before it could flow like that.
Right, I assume it. I mean, it's something you need to practice as well. So I assume that the viewers who don't know you are very curious now who TReb is. Did I pronounce it correctly? TReb? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. TReb is my very first guide. I went through a deep depression. After I got out of that depression, I started learning to meditate. I went to a spiritualism church for a while. They helped me. I started going into binaural beats, and then I met TReb one night in a very, very deep meditation. And anybody who's ever astral projected can understand this, but if you don't, imagine you're in a dream state with 100% control, 100% lucidity, and 100% memory recall, and it feels just as real as if your physical body's there, but you know that you're not in your physical body. That's how I met TReb, and when I did, it was pretty terrifying. He's a very big and large being. He is over 7.5 foot tall. He's a reptilian-human hybrid, so he looks very much like the bad guy alien setup that they've got in the entire collective.
So did you get scared? I mean, we usually, many do. Many are afraid of the reptilians, you know?
It triggered me. It did. It only lasted for about a moment. When I first seen him come through the doorway or the archway that was there, it scared me pretty bad. But after a moment, I just felt this energy of love, and it hit me so hard, it just calmed me down instantly. The meeting itself, when I got back to my body, it scared me bad enough where I had to quit channeling or quit meditating for a few days completely and really look into my belief systems about what was happening here. So
wow. Yeah, it's so much wisdom that I feel TReb is coming out with in the book, and you were also channeling someone else, Artif, I think, that's coming from an even higher dimension, and I want to speak about that after. But I was thinking about, while we're on the subject of more, reptilian, maybe some are thinking that they are more, or some of them are benevolent beings. And then I read in the book, Miguel, you said that there are actually fewer, or the hostile beings are in a minority, actually. And that it's a matter of how you look at it. Like the way you look at good and evil is just like a perspective in a way.
Well, that was, I was probably quoting the figures from the Free Experiencer survey. Free, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters or Experiences. I forget which it is. And they, I'm actually working with them at the moment on a forthcoming book. It's going to be an edited volume due out next April, I believe, called Beyond UFOs, The Science of Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. And that book is going to be a detailed analysis of the data that they've collected from several thousand experiences. This is in several languages now, I believe. And it's like a 5-phase study over about 3 years. And what they found, for me, the headline statistic is that something like 70% of experiencers report positive experiences. And the view of, and the view that people have of whether, let's say, the sort of orientation along a spectrum of negative to positive, as the experiences continue over time, people tend to shift along that spectrum and start to move past their own fear and start to understand in a deeper way what the experience really is, who the beings really are, what it's all about, what the context is, what their relationship is with the beings, and all of those things. Like every other kind of relationship, they develop over time, and I think that this figure of 70%.
Our perspective changes towards these beings because we learn more. So maybe we thought, they were, bad guys before, and then we learned some more and we look at it in a different way. Yeah, I've actually interviewed more people on this, like Bridget Nielsen and Gigi Young, and they were like focusing on, these abduction programs, that it's another way of looking at it, that you have agreed to it before you come down to this earth, and we are actually growing together in a way. We're learning from each other. And I thought, and I see that you mentioned that in the book as well, that they learn from us too. And I thought that was interesting, that we're not like these underdeveloped beings and they are the gods in a way, but we learn from each other. Would you say that too, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that no matter who you are, what your beliefs are, if you interact with them more than just 1, 2, 3 times, you're going to understand a lot more. Most people who do connect with these beings, especially those who do it physically, you're still tied into your body, and our body carries so much trauma in our DNA from dealing with extraterrestrials, from our very first encounter with the Anunnaki through all the different manipulations of our DNA and all the different ET races that came down on Earth and lived here. You go through the Hindu text and you see many different races. There was a lot of trauma there. There were wars, there was enslavement, there was a lot of bad things that happened in the past with humans dealing with extraterrestrials. So automatically, I think just from your DNA and just from all your ancestral energy, you're triggered as an automatic bad response. If you're open energetically, if your belief systems aren't wrapped around fear, you'll have the opportunity to experience them for what they are and what they've come to do. Most races, type 1 or type 2, they come into your experience for a reason. So even if there is one who is not the best of beings or the nicest of beings, they're still there to teach us something. And if you can see that, then any interaction's good. Then that 70% will go up to 100%.
Wow, that was so many interesting things you were mentioning now, like the history and that we've been going through a lot. And I was thinking, okay, so in the course of history, we have probably been modified by the ETs, a lot of people are saying. So if they were kind of doing something bad that frightened us, would you say that they have evolved too in a way? Aside, like at the same time as we have evolved, so they have perhaps have a greater consciousness now, or that's probably difficult to talk about because there's no time. But I'm just thinking, if they did something to us that wasn't good, like millions of years ago, have they evolved past that sort of consciousness?
I think most races have. Even when you look at the Anunnaki, a lot of the trauma that first started there was from them coming and modifying humans. There's a lot of people who said they took us on for slave labor, and from what TReb and Artif said, that's not really true. Okay. You know, we did work with them and stuff, but even they, after leaving the first time, came back because they saw that all the things that they did weren't necessarily so kind. And even just a few hundred years later, they sent more entities back to teach more of what they had already taught, more science, more, you know, how to get through the day, how to build cities, how to create drainage for the water. I mean, everything. They taught the Sumerians, and they felt kind of bad about what they did. So they saw this experience, and it changed them too. And I think every entity, no matter how benevolent or malevolent they are, they get to experience a shift in any direction they're trying to. And when you deal with humans, it's usually a very changing experience for any race that I've ever heard that's dealt with humans one-on-one, because we're so weird and different, and our energy is so loving and capable of hatred all in the same breath, and that's not normal. You know, usually you're one or the other or somewhere in the middle, and we've got that really big spectrum. The guy who kisses his child goodnight and then goes to war and kills 20 people that night, that person's full of love and disconnection. And when you deal with something like that, it has to be able to change you.
Wow. Yeah, I've always been curious about that. If the human beings are special, or if we just feel we're special because we are human beings, you know, and we want us to be special, because I feel like the universe is so big. And you were even speaking about, or TReb or Artif was speaking about the universe, but also the multi-universe, that there is a kind of a same law. And it was, I think it was love, like that everything is made out of love and light, and that was a fact, like in this universe and in all other universes. And I thought that was really beautiful, like there's a red thread here, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that TReb shared with me a lot. And then once Artif came along, he reiterated and expanded on it. But even in universes where nothing's physical in the same way we think of physicality, it still has that same thread of love and light not necessarily being a physical light that you can see, but one that's ingrained with wisdom. So love and wisdom resides in every consciousness in this universe and in every other universe, no matter how similar or different they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that word wisdom and I just love it. I think it, because he talked about that there was love and wisdom and they were practicing different things at the same time. But to keep myself on track here, tell us a little bit more about TReb and Artif, because they come from different dimensions, I understand. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of dimensions and what the difference is between them?
Absolutely. TReb is a fifth density being, which means he's a sixth dimensional being. And he comes from the Capella star system. When we look up, we see one star, but in reality, there's four stars. He lives around one of the red dwarf stars in that system. He's reptilian-human hybrid, meaning he's half of this reptilian animal that was on his homeworld and half Nihal, which are humanoid. The Nihal collective are a group of humans who in our future, one version of our future, leaves the Earth and goes to a star called Beta Leporis. Once they create a new species there and integrate into that planetary consciousness, they created TReb's race. So TReb does have distant relation to human genes. And he lives in six-dimensional energy, which means right now he's going through the exploration of wisdom, complete wisdom. That's why he's so insightful about how things work. If you're in a physical body, you're doing work. And this is something I think a lot of people kind of mistake too. They say, well, these entities are in this higher dimension. They are perfect, but no, they're still growing too. They're not 100% connected to all source energy like a non-physical being would be, or someone who's mastered the physical reality and lives in a non-physical state. So he's learning wisdom and complete wisdom. Their race uses external and internal technology. So if TReb wants to come to Earth physically, he would have to get into his ship and his consciousness would mix together, and they would be able to come here. And they could come instantly because they know how to shift their consciousness through time-space. Now, Artif, on the other hand, he's what we call sixth density, and that energy is like a seventh dimensional being. It's the last stop that you have before leaving physical reality. Excuse me. His part and growth in the evolutionary chain is where love and wisdom combine. Like right now, we're going from third to fourth density, so we're going to look at that love aspect and start opening our hearts for real unconditional love, not the human version of unconditional love, but real unconditional love. TReb's mastered that, Artif's mastered that, and Artif's mastered wisdom. So the way he always describes it is when I'm looking at something that I want to learn, I can completely connect all of my consciousness to it. I love it. I become intimate with it. And also, anyone who I love, I can know everything about. And it's not just I know their favorite color, it's I know how the cellular level mechanics work with this person. I know all the thousands of different layers of energy that are in this person, and I know all about them throughout all of their incarnations in physical reality. So Artif is a complete level of mastery. He doesn't need technology to travel. If he wanted to travel to Earth, he could simply think about Earth and be here. So this is almost to the level where he's going to be leaving physical reality and mastered all. Artif is a Denebian.
You're saying that he is kind of physical, but in another dimension he is physical?
All beings who are in third, fourth, fifth, sixth density are all physical beings, but they're only physical on their level. Artif and TReb, if they stood next to me now in their own density and their own 100% energy, I couldn't perceive them unless I had my third eye open to them, because they're in a higher dimensional plane. The lowest level of vibration on TReb's whole physical plane is higher than our light, which is the highest vibrational frequency on our. So it's a higher than light energy. And his highest is even lower than Artif's bottom part. So it's separated by dimensions, even though we all share that same time-space. It's just a different level of vibration and a faster vibration for all the physical things. Artif, he can perceive everything below him. Like when you're a sixth density being, you can see fourth, third, fifth, all the energies below you. But TReb would not be able to physically see Artif. He would only be able to telepathically. So in that way, the same way I experience TReb as my guide, TReb experiences Artif as his. And Artif is Denebian, which means he's on the home star Deneb, and he's a humanoid consciousness, but not, he doesn't look like humans like us. He's very small, petite, blue-skinned being with purple hair, purple eyes. So he's 3'4", I think, if I'm remembering correct. So he's not human in our human version, but he's humanoid. And that's kind of TReb and Artif in a complete nutshell.
There he is. I thought it was a woman. I thought it looked like a not a woman, but feminine.
Everybody does. Everybody takes Artif. We have a lot of people call Artif she all the time, and he doesn't. The sexuality part of it doesn't exist with Artif, but the masculine energy is what he takes on as his own energy. So that's kind of, the masculine and feminine are different in those type 1 higher vibrations. TReb doesn't have any reproductive organs, so he's not truly a guy either, or a man. He is just a consciousness that's 1/2 of 2 different energies. On Earth, we can tell by the physical body, the genitals, the construction of the body, but in the higher dimensions, for most races, you can only tell with their energy, and they both play 1/2 of an energy for their collective consciousness. So,
wow, it's so fascinating. Thank you for really explaining that. And I just get like a million questions. There's so much to ask about, but we'll see what we can go through. Miguel, I was wondering. You said in the book, I'm going to a new topic now, that we perhaps shouldn't waste our time in a way so much on the top-down disclosure. That we should perhaps focus more on what you are doing, like bottom-up disclosure. I haven't heard that expression before, but I thought that was interesting, because I felt like a few years ago everybody was speaking about disclosure, and I feel like we focus on the physical, like we need to have physical beings to prove that this is right, but there's another aspect of it which is more like spiritual that we're talking about now, like through channelers and stuff like that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to that insight?
Well, I guess it was through We Are the Disclosure, just asking lots and lots of people, 27 people across the 2 parts of that book, for their thoughts on disclosure, on many, many different aspects of it. And it became clear to me that in a way, it's like this line came to me, whether this was a download, I don't know, but it just showed up in my head. It said, "Only a fool asks a liar for the truth." And the idea of asking political authorities for the truth on this subject, well, let's think about that. What would they tell us? If you think about the way that power works, it generally works through fostering dependency in other people. And I mean, there's obviously many aspects to power, acquiring and maintaining it. But I think that that central point is probably the most instructive here. That if there were ever to be any kind of sharing of information about this, I cannot imagine what would motivate them to act in any way other than to, whether they fabricate or not, they would push the fear aspect of this because their job depends on it. Their position depends upon us viewing them as the authority in all definitions of that word, the holders of power and the holders of knowledge. And it seems to me that it is a colossal waste of time to put all our eggs in that basket. That isn't where we're going to get any kind of truth. And the fact is that every human being has their own truth. There is no central truth for humanity. If you've ever heard of the, I forget their name, but there is a particular group or sect or cult, whatever is the appropriate term, who believe you don't even need food. You can live on prana, on liquid light. And most of these people end up starving themselves to the brink of death. So they don't even agree that all humans need food. The point being that there is very little, if anything, that all humans agree upon. Everybody has their own truth, their own understanding, their own senses, their own psychic map of the world, their own cosmology, whether they realize it or not. I believe this is the case. So from the top down, that's what I believe we would get. I mean, they may go to researchers who focus on the negative aspects, the fear-based aspects of this. I mean, when 9/11 happened, there was no talk about, well, let's try to understand what may have created this. It was, well, let's just bomb people. Where can we go? Who can we bomb? Who can we kill? Look at all this weaponry. We're going to fire all this stuff at those guys. That is the mentality here. That's the response. That's the response to crisis. And when has that ever worked in any relationship? When has that ever worked? It seems to me, in general, that humans aren't really constructed in that way. And so what can we do? I think as individuals, as experiencers, I think that as Rob has kind of, he hasn't talked about it specifically, but I know it's in the book. I know from being connected to Rob that so much of where he got to was because he went inside first. He had no, it was not like he had a checklist. He didn't have a copy of Being with the Beings. He did not have some guide to ET contact. It wasn't like that. He started on a journey to improve his whole being, his whole universe, his whole reality. That's where it started. It started with an internal journey. It's like you got to go in to get out. And all of the people around the world, all the people that I've met, that I've interviewed, that have come to me subsequent to seeing interviews, to reading the books, they want to share. They want to talk to somebody who's not going to call them crazy. There's no such thing as crazy in the subject. There's no such thing as judgment. How can you judge somebody else's reality? How can you do that?
Yeah,
I think we have to welcome and allow.
It's just so fascinating because you see reality from your own head and you feel like everybody's seeing the same thing as you do, but you actually can't know, like, what is red. I can't explain red at all to you. Like, I wouldn't have words. Like a rose. No, but the rose is red. So I think it has something to do with that we actually have no idea what each other are experiencing. Why do you think the ETs are contacting us now? Like, because I'm thinking we have free will in a way as human beings. And they're not like showing up on our doorstep, you know, saying what we should do. But still, they are contacting us or through channelers, and they want to come with a message. I'm like curious why they are coming to us when we do have free will in a way, and why they, if they want to help us raise our frequency, why they want that if we should kind of grow naturally and organically and do it in our own pace in a way. Like, why do they interact with us?
Yeah.
That's the
I had the exact same questions. The exact, every dot and comma, that was the question.
Funny.
I'm going to say a little bit about this, and Rob will say a little bit about this, because it's a huge subject. So I'll just say a couple of things that come to mind. I mean, the book is called The How and the Why. I'm very interested in why. I'm always interested in that word in particular. Why did things happen? It seems to me that's, again, missing in our culture in a huge way. I just talked about it in terms of 9/11 and all of that crisis, conflict. Getting to the why, very, very important. Why are they coming to us? What is this about? I think part of it is you have to, I think, refer back to what Rob was talking about in terms of dimensions, and what he hasn't opened up yet, which he will do, is his relationship with the deeper levels of the relationship he has with TReb. Let's park that. Let's put a pin in that. Rob will come back to it. For myself, right at the outset, the first thing I said was, beginning of this conversation, was that I felt it was me who was dropping the next project into my lap. I think a big part of this contact is not them or other or somebody different, somebody else. I think that a lot of this contact, and you'll read it in the book in many of the chapters, I think Darlene Vandergrift talks about it specifically. Vashta certainly goes into detail. I think a lot of these beings that we connect with are connected to us on a spiritual and even cellular level, the DNA level. I think that where a lot of the stuff comes from, for me, it feels so familiar that I believe it is a higher self. It is another aspect of myself, another aspect of my consciousness, which is not bounded by time or space. It is not bounded in the material. It is unbounded. I mean, that's, to me, the nature of consciousness. And so that's one answer I would give, is that actually it's not them, it's us. And there is no difference. It is all interchangeable. And at that point, I'm going to tag Robin.
Yeah, it's I totally agree with Miguel. I didn't even think about extraterrestrials before I met TReb. I didn't think about connecting. My whole desire was to create a better life after the multiple years of depression, addiction that I went through. That's what I wanted. I almost became addicted to meditating, the feeling of it, the greatness of it, the feeling about myself, and how much better it cleared my perspective of the world. That was my number one. And I did hope that maybe somewhere I could chat with, like the people in the spiritualism church, with someone who had died and passed over, just so I could see what afterlife was all about. So it's about that exploration, expansion. And I think Miguel expressed it perfectly. When you ask TReb or Artif, why me? How me? Why do they connect? Why do they talk? Why do they share? They share for their own reasons. They want other entities, humans, people, to understand the nature of how things work, that you create the things in your life, both figuratively and literally. And they also want us to know that we are unlimited in our way we experience. We are creator beings, and we can connect with our own energy to make our life what we want it to be. The reason TReb came to me is because I opened my own energy and called out to the universe for a larger change. He is a part of my oversoul who has such a similar vibration that it was the natural second step. I often describe channeling or even contact in this way. You're in a room with 20 people and it's very loud. You're at a party. Your physical body represents your consciousness. Well, it's so loud you can't hear, and the closest person to you is 2 foot to the right. So when you start expanding out, the first person you bump into is the one next to you. Then you get to talk with them. You can hear them now because they're right next to you. And when they tell you about their day and you tell them about yours, you can expand more because you've taken in more. You've understood another perspective. And then you bump into the person 5 foot to the right. That's how channeling contact works. You have to expand until you get to the being that's closest to you vibrationally. And once that occurs, that's why I've been able to connect to the multiple hundred beings I've done. Every time I meet another one, I get to grow a little bit more. And there's so many entities and beings that exist on a multidimensional level, on different matrices, in different universes everywhere, that have that connection possibility that it's almost impossible. It's like walking down the street without hitting an oxygen molecule. That's how condensed our universe is with consciousness. When you start growing, you're going to bump into something. My person to the right, 2 feet, that was TReb for me. That was the closest person at the party to me. And once I got to hear what he had to say, it made me grow that much quicker.
That's fascinating. I just got so many pictures in my head. I mean, it makes sense. We feel like the universe is far out there. The stars are there. The beings are out there. But I think they're here. We just, I know this intellectually that I'm vibrating on a different frequency, so I can't see them. But still, it's like they're far away and I'm here. I feel like I'm stuck sometimes in my old belief system, even though I believe in something else. And it's just, yeah. You feel kind of in a way that you, the way you're brought up, the way you have been taught to think, it's really stuck like a program in your head, even though I'm so open to so many things. It's interesting. So how is TReb a part of you, like Miguel was starting to speak about? Because maybe we can understand how other beings are part of us also.
Absolutely. When you look, and I hate to use the term hierarchy of consciousness, but it goes from the smallest fractal of consciousness to the larger. When you look at a circle, we're one small piece of that circle, one sliver of that circle. When we go up, we hit our higher self. And us plus our higher self is our complete entity or being that we are. So the Rob that you're talking to now is about 20 to 25% of the Rob that is. Then the other 75% is the one that's connected into my oversoul and connected into all this other energy. This is the parts that we tap into when we meditate, when we be ourselves, when we do the things that excite and motivate growth. After that, you go into your oversoul. Now, your oversoul is the whole circle. And in this oversoul, all of your past lives, all of your future lives, all of your probable lives, and even parallel energies that you don't necessarily experience but have the capacity or possibility to experience are there. I am literally just one in millions of entities and fractals in my oversoul. TReb is another one. He's a part of my oversoul that is a larger consciousness in a higher dimension that happens to be human reptilian hybrid. There are avians there, insectoids, there are reptilians, there are any type of being you could think of. There is a version of that in my oversoul. The Earth Collective has 144,000 oversouls. That's why you see that number pop up so much in religion.
I have to ask that. Why is that? That sounds so weird to me that there's a specific number. Why that number? Have you asked TReb that?
No, it's just the way it was divided. There's a frequency that goes into, like, if you go to Mars, they have a different amount of oversouls that are there. They might have 10,000 or 30,000. 144 is just the division of consciousness that it decided to iterate itself into. And it's different with each one. Our Earth Collective has 144, and we have 144 twin soul energies, which are like a mitosis state version of the oversoul that plays out all of the probabilities. So it's complex, but we don't want to get lost in the complexity. The mechanics are definitely important, but the important thing really to focus on is that you're just one little tiny part of a larger puzzle, and the more you expand, the more you get to have. Treb and my own journey together has been amazing because we've intimately interacted for as long as we have now. It's been probably close to 10 years now that Treb and I have really been knowing each other and connecting. When I met him and understood him, I felt his energy even before he was there, but about 10 years of really knowing him, this gave me time to be part of his vibration. The more that we communicate, the more that we become part of each other. It's just like getting in a relationship. This is the best example I can give. When you find a new girlfriend, at first you're both very different. When you live with each other for 5 years, you start taking on good and bad habits from the other person, and you become more of a couple than you do two individuals. This is the same thing with Treb and I. That intimacy, I think, is what Miguel was getting at. That connection process, and it's almost an amalgamation energy when we channel that connects us all together. Artif, Treb, myself, and that energy takes on the lower fractals, or the smallest parts of ourselves, the identity of Treb and Artif and Rob. We all borrow and take and add to each other in that way because we're so connected.
So what then happens when you pass over to the other side, or me? Like, where do you go then? Do you just merge into, like, that is the thing I don't understand, because they are physical but in another density, and I'm physical in another density, but when I die I become something else. But what density do I go into then? And yeah, you understand my question.
I do. That's the reason I started my whole journey, to find out what happened. And now I have an answer. Now, this is something that I am very excited about, the mechanics of consciousness, but it does confuse people. So I'm going to try to make it as simple a model as I can. Right now, we're going between third and fourth density. We're actually fourth density beings, but most of us still, with our beliefs, with our limitations of thought, keep ourselves in a third density reality, but we're fourth density now. So when we're going into the death cycle, we're actually going to a space that's between fourth and fifth density. That place gives us more of our, like I said, the Rob, that's me, is 25%. My higher self is 75%. So in between lives, you're basically integrating with the rest of that 75%. You're becoming the whole entity that you are. So when you die and when I die, they're going to be two different things completely, because both of us have different beliefs. We both have different experiences. So when you die, it's going to be a lot like when you're living in your physical body. You're going to create your own reality through perspective, perceptions, and energy, but you're going to be able to integrate into a much, much higher consciousness level. Even Treb and Artif, they have a lot more consciousness than we do, but if their consciousness was the same size, once we get to that part before we incarnate again, we would have integrated more of our consciousness than even Treb or Artif if they were in the same dimension as us. So this is huge. This means we get to go all the way into our higher selves, and that in-between lives is basically the graduation of that. Some people take thousands of years because their beliefs, they have to go through experiencing a self-created version of heaven or hell or whatever their beliefs allow them to go through. But through that experience, they're going to have creations with other beings. There was a movie once, and I watched it before I knew what I knew, and I watched it after. A whole different movie once you do. But I think it's called Where Dreams May Come, or When Dreams May Come.
I've
Robin.
seen
Yes.
it. Yeah, it's beautiful. Oh, wow.
That's a lot how it is. It's a co-creation with other beings and a creation of your own. And expanding into that reality, it'll give you just as much an individual afterlife as it does a physical life. So it's a choose your own adventure type thing.
Wow, it's so big, it's so amazing. And I want to ask you, Rob, how can we have experiences? I feel like it has to do with, you have to be open in some sense. You have to have some belief in it. It seemed like TReb was saying, like, if you 100% doubt that anything will happen, nothing will happen. You need that small openness. But if you have a little openness, you know, it can come in. But still, some of us have a lot of openness and we're like, yeah, we want this to happen, and nothing happens, and we get so discouraged. So how can we have contact?
And this is something I've personally have asked TReb about, because it seems like the way that they teach how to create is sometimes a double-edged sword. I have beliefs that it can happen, but yet I don't have experiences to match. So how can you make up that void there? How can you make some people get an answer from TReb that they don't expect? It's because the expectations of how you're going to experience that. Some people say the only way I'll be able to kind of firm my beliefs is if I have ET land in my room and take me for a ride on a craft. Well, now you're only open to one possibility as the prospect of your creation. Now others have a much more widened scope. And something that TReb, Artif, every entity that I've ever connected to has ever told me about creating contact is being yourself. And I know me and Miguel talked about this too before on the last interview we did together. Being yourself is so important, because that's the vibration that opens your chakra energy, that opens the possibility of experience. A lot of the time we say, I can't swear in public because saying bad words isn't spiritual. I can't get mad when I'm driving because that's not spiritual. So we try to correct ourselves by blocking ourselves. Sometimes when an energy comes into you of frustration or anger, it's there as a teacher. So when you're kicking it away, you're kicking away your opportunity to make a real change, to really not get mad the next time it happens. So a lot of the time we're blocking ourselves in little ways like that, but we're doing it with contact. We're placing these expectations because of others' experiences. We're getting a certain energy of trying to block the true version of ourselves. So most people who haven't had that big, profound experience, I would say, don't look for a big, profound experience. Just look for confirmation of the experience you already have. When you're dealing with synchronicities, that is an experience. That's a part of your co-creation. When you're dealing with hearing from other sources that you feel are resonant with you about experiences, that's another way. So when you're opening yourself to all that and you're excited, be with yourself, meditate, do all the things that you feel excited about, that you feel will better you. Just don't place an expectation there, and don't say because Rob from Michigan and Miguel have this experience that it should be this way or that way. Because even channeling, which is a very different type of energy from a direct physical experiencer in some ways, even channelers channel different ways. Everybody who's physically had interactions are physically experiencing in different ways. So be open to your own personal interpretational energy, and be open to all the experiences and the way they come. Live in that part of your excitement and keep going down that path, you know? It's kind of like the double-edged sword I was talking about. If you put so much energy into your experience of not having that, then it will come back to you that way. You're telling the universe, I lack experience, so it gives you back lack of experience. And that's why I say being in that moment and just being excited to be yourself as you're doing things, to open yourself for it, that's usually the one trick that when we learn to master helps us open up. You know, I've been lucky in that way. TReb, not wanting to connect to him, or not desiring in the way I thought to connect to him, not trying to connect to him. His connection made me open to so many possibilities. But a lot of people who haven't had that just kind of have to go through that energy, like, you know, just open, happy, excited, and no expectations. So
interesting. I have to ask you, I've talked to some channelers about it, and I feel like it's a touchy topic when it comes to like verification from, you know, the information that comes through channelers. How do you react when people like want to test you, and can you get an answer to anything?
All right, so the testing part doesn't bother me a bit, because I know people, their minds are skeptical by nature. It's the way we're taught, vibrationally and through the systems of schooling. They do that because when you're questioning things that feel positive or good, then sometimes you'll rob yourself from them. And that's the system they've designed. In school, they teach you, you know, one right answer, no other answer, one right thing, no other thing. If you get it wrong and try to think outside, you're not doing right. So we're trained as humans to do that. People's own beliefs, I don't ever try to manipulate them. I don't ever want them to just believe what I say. I want them to use their own discernment. Just like Miguel said, just like the book said, it's not about what others believe. It's about my own experience. So all I can do is share my channeling, and all the people who receive the channeling can do is take it for what they will. Now, when it comes to can you get any answer, the answer for that is yes and no. Do we have the capacity to do any answers when you're in a channeled state or connecting? Yes, but do we get every answer? No, and that's a multiple variation of reasons. For instance, when someone says, my neighbor, talking to TReb Bor, Artif, my neighbor is rude, I hate him, why does he pick on me? Why does he act rude? Well, TReb and Artif are type 1 beings. They're not going to go into that guy's energy to look around because that guy hasn't given them permission to do so. So they can't talk intelligently about something that they can't reference or connect to because of their own beliefs. Being a type 1 being means you don't step in the free will of another being.
Yeah, what is a type 1, since you're mentioning it, type 1 being?
Yeah, there's two archetypes of consciousness. The type 1, those who are in full belief of oneness. They see their connection to everything, whether it's a good thing or bad thing. They see the entity that is connecting to them and their own right for sovereignty. They see free will and believe in free will and not to intervene against someone's free will. And they also kind of have an energy where type 2 beings, they don't care as much. And type 2 is a spectrum. Type 2 can be a very loving, benevolent being or a very malevolent, disconnected. All type 2 is, they will impede on your free will for their own sake. A lot of extraterrestrial races do this with humans. They say, we love the humans. We're benevolent and we love the humans, but they're not smart enough to figure this out on their own. We're going to help them. They just took away our ability to create. Not really, because on a soul level, we're allowing them to step in. But on that simple basis, they're a type 2 being. But the type 2 can see separation and variations, and that's kind of the difference in those two energies.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So Miguel, when you ask the channelers in this book about yourself, I'm curious. Did you feel like you got the same answers in a way? What was it like? Some answer, no questions you asked everybody about yourself? Do you feel like you get the same confirmation or the same information?
Well, I had been out on a walk in the middle of this process, and I was thinking about in the production process, and I was thinking about writing a book called My 27 Guides, and it would be a book in which I would just ask everybody who can bring me an information about my guides and put it together, just compile all of the different profiles, the information they've given me about guides. However, in in putting together Being with the Beings, I felt that I could combine them, that I had a perfect opportunity. All I had to do was ask the question and just slide it in there. And it would also give the reader an opportunity to see how they can work with the people in the book. If they want information about their guides, about how to work with guidance, it's almost like a stand-in for the reader so that they can understand, well, if I pose that question, how do they address it? How do different people come at this? What kind of, what level of information is available to me from the different people involved? And I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. I actually never totted it up, but I think a couple of people have said they had a sense of a reptilian being. I think one said the very first one anybody ever mentioned before I'd even interviewed Rob, funnily enough, was a reptilian hybrid. And
sorry, that you were a reptilian hybrid?
No,
or?
that one of my guides was a reptilian hybrid.
Okay.
A couple of times it came up, a Syrian guide, and
but did you feel like they said something of the same, or did they say completely different things? Because I feel like if more people confirm something to me, then I believe it even more. And I have a very skeptical mind, and I've been read very many times, and I've experienced many times that they are saying the same, and it's like really confirmation. When they're pointing out different things about me than that they could know, it's really a good confirmation. So I was just wondering if you had the same experience.
Well, I don't tend to get hung up on specifics because I don't want to spend my time talking to a reptilian hybrid entity that may or may not exist. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. What I do know is that I have been more interested, more involved, had a bigger stake in connecting to the higher self. I don't necessarily need a whole panoply of other beings, even though in a different regression with Hank Jones II, who, as I understand it, passed away. I don't know if you heard that, Rob, but he has been involved in this field for a while. He's done regression work. He had a YouTube channel where he was showing his regressions, and we did one, and he must have died within weeks of that session. But I wanted to meet my guides, and he took me on this crazy trip. One of these days I'm going to set it to music. It was just absolutely fascinating, the whole experience. I mean, I saw myself as a ET, as a I think a Pict, a Scots warrior from however many centuries ago. And then he took me to this other realm, and he asked me to look down. All my answers are long-winded, I know, but I'm getting there. He asked me to look down and tell him what I see. And the first thing I see is like this porcelain white skin, these little, I've got these days skinny arms, but they were even skinnier, and just 3 fingers and a thumb, porcelain white. And I was wearing this robe and had these real delicate white feet. And then he said, well, you turn around and there's a mirror there. Tell me what you see. And it's, some kind of ET. Some people describe it as a Zuma Zeta. Not a humongous grey type head, but smaller and real delicate sort of nose and mouth. Then I turn around and there's a big gateway, a big stone doorway. And he said, a being comes out. And this is the first of your guides, I think he said. And who is it? And it's just this humongous angel about, I'd say, about 9 feet tall. But this one was not androgynous like the first one I met. It was definitely masculine looking and walks down these steps to me. And he says, the being does something. What does it do? And this being just leant down and put its forehead to mine. And I just saw the cosmos. And I get the word remember. And it's like, this word is about 4 miles wide. It's just, this word is huge. And it's just this reverberation. And there's this sort of kind of thing where the cosmos just expands massively, rapidly. And then we have an exchange, and he's just giving me these kind of keywords. And I've never listened back to this session, but I'm going to do it someday. And then he introduced me to my guides, and I just see a row of them. And the one that really stood out to me was a blue avian being. And it stood out. I mean, everybody else was there. I mean, it's like the gang's all here.
You saw this in hypnosis or in some sort of an...
Yeah, it's a regression.
A regression.
Yeah,
okay.
like I guess you could call it a guided visualization. And all the time I'm thinking, surely I'm making this stuff up. Surely I'm just, but there was things in there that I wouldn't know how to make it up. I mean, the blue avian really stood out to me because I have never... Up to that point, I'd never given them the slightest... I never read anything about them. I'd seen, I think, 1 or 2 pictures. I think I'd heard the phrase here and there. So it really stood out to me. And then with Darlene Vandergrift, who's the first chapter, we did a guided visualization together. It was like she does regressions with people, I believe. But this was a shared regression, if you like. So the 2 of us are in the experience. And we go into this, it's like one starts the thing off and then the next person adds something. It's like sitting around a campfire telling stories, making it up together. And then we go through this, I think we start the edge of a rock wall, and then there's a cave, and we go in, and I saw there's like quicksilver on the floor, but it was like golden quicksilver, if that works for you. And then we follow this, and we get to this cavern, small cavern, and there's a beautiful, like almost a sort of, it's like a tiled fountain. And she says, okay, so we go to the edge of the water and we look down, and what do we see? And what I see is 2 blue avians. And in this experience, she is this little blue avian, this little guy, and I'm her father.
Oh. Wow.
I don't know. I don't even remember what the question was, but I hope that answered it.
No, I asked if when you ask, channelers, do you get the same answer about yourself? But I think definitely, like, if it resonates in you, like you feel if it's true or not, you just really have to listen inside and maybe also explore in your own meditation, like regression, because if you do see something there, I think it verifies things more than if you just hear something from somebody else in a way.
Yeah. I mean, Rob said this perfectly, and Artif over and over again. If you read their chapter, because basically I interview Rob, then I interview Artif. Like I interview the beings through the channels in this book, and it's one of the phrases that really stayed with me, and I think of it daily. Is follow your excitement.
Yes, I was
follow your excitement.
Yeah.
What is it that is giving you energy? What is pulling you towards it?
I love that.
What do you want to learn about? And when somebody gives you information, I think that sometimes it's the opposite of excitement. It's a cold, dark, nasty feeling in the gut, but it may be that the only way you're ever going to shift that is if you shift your relationship to it. And so it may not be, I'm super excited about going to this really dark place, but there is growth there. And I believe that friction, I believe that dynamism, where you find conflict in yourself and with other people, I think if you're willing to go there with love, with openness, I think that is where you find the blessing that is where things shift, they change, they open up. You're a different person on the other side. I mean, again, we could go back to Rob's story of who he was before this. I could say the same. I mean, I was working very successfully, I would say, as an environmentalist. Then I woke up one morning and I could not feel my toes. And thus started about 4 or 5 years of true dark night of the soul, where it turned out I had multiple sclerosis. So my body is falling apart around my ears every single day. But this work, this community, this unfolding that I've experienced could never have happened if the illness did not happen. So in a sense, I changed my relationship with the illness. I started to see it as a colleague. I work with it. It has brought me an amazing opportunity. And I get emails every week from people who have read the books, who come to this information through interviews that people like yourself facilitate. And I've managed to put something wonderful into the world in collaboration, in co-creation, as Rob and Artif and TReb would say, with all of these people. And I think when you really get stuck into Rob and Artif's chapter, that word co-creation is going to come through to you over and over and over again. Absolutely everything around us is co-creation. Nothing is done in a vacuum. All of this is energy, matter, consciousness, purposive, interacting, and creating every moment. So when you ask me, what is the difference in my life? It's that I consciously co-create every day of my life. I pick and I choose. I listen to my guidance. I allow what is coming in. I do not reject it. I don't get obsessed with worrying about where it came from. As you said just a moment ago, Yannicka, does it resonate? Does it work for you? Does it excite you? And I think absolutely everybody who is listening to this has experienced that. I think everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. But sometimes I think we just have to have that little bit of belief, that little bit of faith that this is the right thing to do. So much of our culture celebrates self-indulgence in a material way. But I think to be self-indulgent in a spiritual way is what this world is crying out for.
Beautiful. And I want to ask you lastly, Rob, how has this changed you inside as a person connecting to these beings?
I always try to explain it as black and white, night and day. It's completely different. I've had so many great experiences before I met them. I had my son, which came with a lot of complications with his cerebral palsy. I had friends. I had a good family. But I also had a lot of dark times, and that dark energy ate up most of who I was for a long time. Depression, drug abuse. I had an accident with the drug abuse, pain medicine at first, and it spiraled out of control. And after I got out of the drug energy completely, that's when I reconnected. And once I reconnected to myself, the connection with them came. And once that happened, night and day. And I think one thing that this book points out, especially, in the chapter with myself and Artif, like Miguel was saying about the interaction with yourself first and the secondary interaction, is a change that everyone can make. My beliefs, my energy, my day-to-day life experience are just so much different than what they used to be. Even before the depression, when I was still an averagely happy person, that version of happiness is nothing compared to the version of happiness I've been able to find by finding the true nature of myself. And that's the thing. I think the overall nature of yourself is always changing, and it's only determined by yourself unless you allow others to determine it for you. But when you lock into that and allow that change and flow to take you through excitements, co-creation, and very importantly, community with others who want to co-create with you, who are excited to co-create with you, that's when the big changes are made. I think community and any co-creation is an important thing. And that's one thing I try to share with people too. If you need these big changes in your life, find people who live in the vibration that you want to achieve. Start a community with people who are excited about the same things you want. And once you co-create with these other beings and create this community of excited, open people, your vibration will more and more shift towards being open and excited and happy. So I think that's really an important thing. And Miguel and I have talked about community and the importance of it, but it's always important to reiterate, your community can be anything. It can be a bunch of people who are political or religious or war or racist, or you can have communities that are open and excited and happy and wanting to change themselves and the world at the same time. So I think that's very important, and that change is like a virus. Once you get it, it's like I think Artif or TReb called it once, a happy virus. When you're happy and excited, the people around you get that. So it's important to share yourself with other people too.
Yeah. Thank you so much to both of you. This has been thrilling for me. I so love the subject, and I do many interviews on different topics, but the whole UFO topic has always been very close to my heart, and I don't know why, but I know that there is a reason there, that I'm very connected, even though I haven't had any experiences. I just know. It's like this knowing, so I just love speaking about it, and I got many answers or questions answered in this book actually that really resonated, and that brought my in a way belief system expanded even more. I was like, oh, you know, many things fell into place. So very grateful for the book, for your work, and thank you so much for coming on to the show.
It's a pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Always good.
Thank you so much for having us.
And thank you so much for watching, guys. And remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light from Oslo and the US and England. Bye-bye.